Hey everybody, KC here. So last week I had the interview with Mike Lupica, but one segment that did not make the final cut was a question I wanted to ask him about leadership. So he's been writing a sports column for 40 years. He's covered every major sport. He's covered teams both in the New York metropolitan area and all over the country. So what I was curious, of all the people he'd written about, of all the people he's known, who struck him as the greatest leader? And this was his answer. So, Mike, you've seen head coaches, managers, business leaders of teams throughout your 40-year career as a sports writer. So I'm curious, if you had to name somebody who struck you as being the best leader in that group, who would it be?
Parcells, Bill Parcells. I would put Red Auerbach on that list, but I just know Parcells better than I knew the old man, and it was great knowing the old man. But Parcells was so much more than X's and O's. And for me, he was kind of the new Vince Lombardi. He was like a new age Vince Lombardi. But, you know, all of his ex-players that I've talked to, they say it wasn't just what he did on the field, and it wasn't just what he did in the meeting room. It was how he handled all of those different personalities in that room. And he could handle Phil Simms in a far different way than he had to handle Lawrence Taylor, who was a handful, okay? But one of my favorite stories, Simms told me this story. He hated anybody who fumbled. If you put the ball on the ground, it would make his head explode, okay? And Dave Meggett had replaced Phil McConkey as the Giants' punt returner. And he had started fumbling. And one day, Parcells is standing next to Meggett's locker. And you know, his game was he wouldn't look at you, but he'd start talking, okay? And he's going through his pockets. And finally, Meggett bites and says, "Did you lose something, coach?" And Parcells said, "Yeah, McConkey's phone number." And after that, Dave Meggett stopped fumbling the ball. And I mean, but he was a leader of football players and a leader of men. So was Auerbach. Here's what I think about Parcells and Auerbach. I believe you could have put them in charge of a team in another sport, and they would have picked up the fundamentals of that sport, but ultimately been just as successful.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.